Today, the state of Kansas, along with the states of Wyoming, Utah, and Alaska, as well as private plaintiffs, Moms for Liberty, Young America's Foundation, and Female Athletes United, of which we have 2 members here today, filed a lawsuit in federal district court for the District of Kansas, challenging the Biden administration's new regulation, or as it's called in federal parlance, a new rule, which purports to interpret Title IX of federal statute. And essentially, in a one-sentence summary, it basically says that treating individuals by their biological sex rather than their chosen gender identity now violates Title IX, is discriminatory, and can cause an educational institution to lose a huge amount of federal funding. In our civil complaint, which you should, if you don't have a copy of it already, it was filed within the last hour, we can get you a copy or get you a link to a copy. Our civil complaint is more than 75 pages long, and it goes into all of the legal violations of this new regulation, explaining why it's unlawful. To give you a quick summary, first of all, the regulation is contrary to it's contrary to the text of the statute itself, which is the Title IX statute. And no regulation can go outside of the 4 corners set by the statute that creates the agency or creates the area of regulatory authority. Second, it violates the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Third, it violates the Administrative Procedure Act. Fourth, it violates the First Amendment rights of free speech and religious free exercise. Fifth, it violates the constitutional separation of powers between the legislative and executive branches. Sixth, it violates Article 1 of the Constitution, exceeding Congress's spending power. And seventh and finally, it violates the 10th Amendment. And those are just the legal problems with this regulation. I think what more people are probably interested in are the actual practical problems and the consequences it has for people all across the state of Kansas, indeed all across the United States. The one that people probably have heard the most about, and this is the first problem with this regulation, is that it will effectively destroy women's sports over time. And the regulation will also overrule the Kansas statute that was passed in this building in 2023 to protect women's and girls' sports in Kansas from intrusion and competition by biological male competitors. This is already happening across the country. It's happening in track and field, swimming, weightlifting, volleyball, cycling, and recently in Kansas, even in wrestling, if you can believe it. Now, it's obvious to anyone who knows anything about sports that this is unfair. It denies girls of an opportunity to win awards, to win scholarships, and in some sports, it endangers the girls. Those reasons alone are enough to file this lawsuit to stop this Biden regulation. But there are other things that it does as well. And those I want to briefly highlight for you. Again, the complaint goes into much greater detail, but there are some other practical effects that this regulation will have, and you may not notice because, again, most of the coverage of this regulation has been on sports. The second thing it does is it provides support for abortions. Under Biden's Title IX rule, schools must provide leave and disability services for those who seek abortions or risk losing federal funding, and this is in spite of the fact that the text of Title IX itself says that it must be neutral with respect to abortion. A third effect it will have is it will create a sexual harassment and free speech nightmare. The regulation poses real due process problems on college campuses related to sexual harassment accusations. And it will affect all college students, not just the athletes, because it requires educational institutions to adopt grievance procedures for administering their sexual harassment rules. And these grievance procedures will now have to change completely because of the transgender element that is forced into what we all, I think, generally now understand as sexual harassment. It's going to become an impossible legal thicket to define who is harassing whom and exactly what constitutes sexual harassment. Students who believe they've been discriminated against or been exposed to a hostile environment on their college campus because of the pronouns that other students are using will have the ability to seek they will institute a procedure to seek a penalty against the offending student, the offending teacher, the offending professor, the offending staff member who has used the wrong pronoun or has said something that they feel insults them or harasses them in some way. And if the school doesn't respond by penalizing or expelling that student, then the school risks losing Title IX funds. It is an extraordinary morass of accusations and penalties on college campus that we are going to see if this rule takes effect. Another effect it has is it violates the free exercise of religion. If this rule takes effect, it will mean that many people who have a faith-based objection to recognizing that someone who claims to have changed sex has changed sex or gender, if one has a religious objection to that and would prefer not to endorse that through their own speech, they will be compelled to speak against their religious beliefs and face penalties if they refuse to speak against their religious, if they refuse to use this speech that is in violation of their own religious beliefs. Another effect, it endangers girls. If the Biden regulation takes effect, a 16-year-old female high school student on an overnight field trip could be forced to share a hotel room with a biological male who identifies as a girl, or the district might risk losing federal funding. This is also something that is not hypothetical. This is something that has already arisen prior to this rule as schools start grappling with the question of whether transgendered individuals have to be treated in all respects as the sex that they purport to adopt. There are other consequences. A 14-year-old girl could be forced to share a locker room and to disrobe and change clothes and shower in the same locker room with an 18-year-old male who identifies as a woman. Or again, the school district could lose Title IX funds. These are all horrible ideas, but in theory, if Congress wanted to change the law, wanted to amend Title IX, and somehow found a way to protect the privacy rights and the First Amendment rights and the free exercise First Amendment rights of individuals and respected the Constitution, Congress, in theory, could change Title IX. But Congress didn't, and Congress won't. And we all know that Congress never would, because it would never come close to getting a majority vote in either House of Congress. So instead, the Biden administration has decided to do yet another end run around Congress and have its administrative agency change Title IX by reinterpreting Title IX and imposing new regulations consistent with that reinterpretation. And that's why it is, in addition to all of the other problems, it's an injustice to us as Americans. We have elected representatives in Congress who are supposed to represent us on important issues like this. Changes like this should never be done through administrative agencies, and it is unconstitutional for them to be done through administrative agencies, and we will argue that point in court. In conclusion, most Kansans know the difference between a man and a woman, but Biden's Title IX regulation effectively requires universities to pretend that there are no biological differences between men and women and effectively erases those differences. It's unconscionable, it's unfair in the athletic arenas, and it's dangerous for girls and women. But for the purposes of this lawsuit, it also violates the law, and therefore we are confident will be held to be illegal. So we look forward to seeing the president's attorneys in court. And before I take some questions, we'll have a couple of statements from some girls who attended my high school alma mater, Washburn Rural, and they have a few things to say.
Hello everyone, my name is Aubrey Simpson and I'm a senior at Washburn Rural High School. In high school, I competed in softball, wrestling, powerlifting, volleyball, and track and field. Next year, I will be playing volleyball at Mid-American Nazarene University on a scholarship. I want to thank Attorney General Kris Kobach for inviting me to speak here today and for trying to protect female athletes just like me. I've been playing sports ever since I could walk, and both my parents were athletes. My mom played volleyball in college as well. I've sacrificed a lot playing sports, including my time with practice almost every single day, my body with 4 head stitches to broken ribs, and a major elbow injury in wrestling that deterred my softball season as well. But Title IX has given me the opportunity to make these sacrifices worthwhile. I have worked incredibly hard to earn a scholarship and be the best I can be in sports. But now, Some officials in Washington are threatening to erase all of that. Because these new Title IX changes, I may be forced to compete against boys who are bigger and faster and stronger than I am. I may have to share locker rooms, restrooms, and even shower areas or changing rooms with them. I am standing up for myself, my little sister, and all the girls like us who want to preserve the original meaning of Title IX. I do not want any girl to lose their opportunity to compete on a level playing field and lose their safety space to change. Politicians in Washington are pushing an agenda that hurts girls and takes away our right to fairness and privacy. That is wrong. I am so grateful for those who are standing against these rule changes, and I hope more will join us, and because women do matter.
Hello, my name is Avalon Simpson, and I play volleyball at Washburn Rural Middle School in Topeka, Kansas. My parents and my older sister have inspired me in a lot of ways in sports, and when I saw my sister running around in the bases at softball, I knew I wanted to be just like her. So when I was 4 years old, I started playing softball, and it's my dream to one day play in college. Sports have taught me so much. I've learned about teamwork and communication. Pretty quickly, I also learned that the boys in my school are bigger and stronger than me. And it became clear to me that it wouldn't be fair if I or other girls had to compete against boys in women's sports. I thought this was pretty obvious to everyone, but I guess it wasn't obvious to some people in Washington, D.C. Last week, some of those people changed some rules that changed my right to fair competition. Now, when I play softball or volleyball, I could be forced to play against these stronger boys. And now boys can access my restrooms, locker rooms, and even hotel rooms on overnight school trips. That is not right. I do not want to have to change and shower in front of boys in the locker room. I'm thankful for officials like Attorney General Kris Kobach, who are taking a stand for girls like me. But I hope that others will listen to voices like mine and my sister's. Title IX matters, and so does women's sports. We should be trying to protect women's rights to fair competition, not making it harder for women to compete and win.